Well, welcome to my slowly progressing read-through of The Lord of the Rings, and we have come to one of my favourite little chapters, actually, in the Fellowship of the Ring, which is chapter 4, A Shortcut to Mushrooms. One of the things I find fascinating about Lord of the Rings, and in fact all of Tolkien's writing, he can on the one hand write chapters that are quite light-hearted. There's some quite light-hearted moments in this, but also very serious. He has the ability to write at multiple levels, often at the same time, and just a real sign of what a gifted writer he was. And one of my favourite little comedy moments starts in this chapter when they're sort of debating, how to carry on their journey towards Bree, where they think they're going to meet Gandalf at the Prancing Pony, and they've had the glimpse of the Black Rider, and so they're a bit afraid they don't want to go on the road. So they talk about doing a shortcut. They can do the shortcut kind of cross country through the fields. There's this lovely line where Pippin says, shortcuts make long delays. The country is rough round here, and there are bogs and all kinds of difficulties down in the Marish. I know the land's in these parts, and if you're worried about Black Riders, I can't see it's any worse meeting them on a road than in a wood or a field. And they discuss this a little bit, and then Pippin says, well, I will follow you into every kind of bog and ditch, but it is hard. I had counted on passing the Golden Perch. That's an inn, a golden perch at stock before sundown, the best spear in East Farthing, or it used to be. It's a long time since I tasted it. Well, that settles it, said Frodo. Shortcuts make delays, but inns make longer ones. And I love that line. Shortcuts make delays and inns make longer ones. I have been on many, many long walks in my life. I'm a hiker and a mountaineer, and I can definitely testify to both those truths. That number of times I've been out with friends, and one of us in the party has gone, hey, I think I know a shortcut here, and inevitably it hasn't been. And pubs, inns definitely make long delays. But that aside, one of the bits I love in the book, the bit I wanted to spend a bit more time on, is later on we meet the character of Farmer Maggot. And when they make their way across the fields and get wet and ripped to pieces by thorns, it really is not the best shortcut in the world, although it keeps them off the road. And towards the end of this part of the journey, we read they passed along the edge of a huge turnip field and they came to a stout gate. Beyond it, a rutted lane ran between low, well-laid hedges towards a distant clump of trees. Pippin stopped. I know these fields and this gate, he said. This is Bam Furlong, old Farmer Maggot's land. That's his farm away there in the trees. Oh, one trouble after another, said Frodo, looking nearly as much alarmed as if Pippin had declared the lane was in the slot leading to a dragon's den. The others looked at him in surprise. What's wrong with old Maggot? Asked Pippin. He's a good friend to all the Brandybucks. Of course, he's a terror to trespassers and keeps ferocious dogs, but after all, folk down here are near the border, and I have to be more on their guard. I know, said Frodo, but all the same, he added with a shamefaced laugh, I'm terrified of him and his dogs. I've avoided his farm for years and years. He caught me several times trespassing after mushrooms when I was a youngster at Brandy Hall. On the last occasion, he beat me, and then he took me and he showed me to his dogs. See, lads, he said, next time this young varmint sets foot on my land, you can eat him. Now, see him off. They chased me all the way to the ferry. I've never got over the fright, although I dare say the beasts knew their business and would not really have touched me. Pippin laughed. Well, it's time you made it up, especially if you were coming back to live in Buckland. Old Maggot is really a stout fellow if you leave his mushrooms alone. Let's get into this lane, and we shan't be trespassing. And if we meet him, I'll do the talking. He's a good friend of Mary's, and I used to come here with him a good deal at one time. Well, I'll come to a bit more of Maggot in a moment. But what I'm struck by is I'm a big fan of, obviously, the books. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, the Peter Jackson movies from sort of 25 years ago. But whilst I love them, I also think Jackson as a filmmaker, and Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, who wrote the scripts, they also made some mistakes, and I realise it's easy to be an armchair critic, but they made a few, I think, howlers. And one howler I think they made was they messed in a way they didn't have to with some of the minor characters. And Farmer Maggot is a case in point. Really, he's become not even a figure of fun, he's just a figure of kind of terror. He's a caricature in the movies. There's a moment in the movies where Frodo and Sam bump into Merry and Pippin, who are in Farmer Maggot's field stealing vegetables, and Farmer Maggot suddenly kind of appears. Don't even see him, you just see the scythe above the corn in the distance, yelling and cursing at them, and they run away in terror, fall down a slope, and that's when they meet the first Black Rider. And so Farmer Maggot just becomes this sort of grown-up who's cross with Merry and Pippin, who, for the start of that movie, are really like teenagers. And that, again, is wrong. In the book, Merry and Pippin, they're young, they're inexperienced, they're a bit sort of, full of the joys of spring, as hobbits are as a character. But Maggot in the book is far more serious, as we're about to discover, because when Sam and Frodo and Merry and Pippin now, get to meet Farmer Maggot, and they are invited for a meal, and Farmer Maggot works out pretty quickly kind of who Frodo is, and makes light of it. He jokes about the fact that, when you're a young hobbit, you came out from the mushrooms. But then what's interesting is we discover that Maggot is quite a serious figure, because he's had a run-in with a Black Rider. The hobbits have met the Black Rider and run away in terror, as well you might. But it turns out that Maggot is quite a character. He talks about what had happened, that he had some sort of strange figures around. And he said, well, the farmer continued, approaching his point with slow relish, he came riding up on a big horse in at the gate, which happened to be open, and right up to my door. All black he was himself too, and cloaked and hooded, as if he did not want to be known. Now what in the Shire can he want? I thought to myself, we don't see many of the big folk over the border, and anyway, I've never heard of any like this black fellow. Good day to you, I says, going out of him. This lane don't lead anywhere, and wherever you may be going, your quickest way will be back to the road. Well, he didn't like the looks of him, and when Grip came out, he took one sniff and let out a yelp, as if he'd been stung. He put down his tail and he bolted off, howling. The black fellow sat quite still. I come from yonder, he said, slow and stiff-like, pointing back west over my fields, if you please. Have you seen Baggins? He asked in a queer voice, and bent down towards me. I couldn't see any face, for his hood fell down so low, and I felt a sort of shiver down my back. But I didn't see why he should come riding over my land so bold. Be off, I said. There's no Bagginses here. You're on the wrong part of the Shire. You had better go back west to Hobbiton, but you can go by the road this time. Baggins has left, he answered in a whisper. He's coming. He's not far away. I wish to find him. If he passes, will you tell me? I will come back with gold. No, you won't, I said. You'll go back where you belong, double quick. I give you 1 minute before I call all my dogs. He gave a sort of hiss. He might have been laughing, and it might not. Then he spurred his great horse right at me, and I jumped out of the way only just in time. I called the dogs, but he swung off, and he rode through the gate and up the lane towards the causeway like a bolt of thunder. What do you think of that? Well, what do we think of that? What I think of that is Maggot's a fascinating character. This is the first example in the entire 3 volumes of Lord of the Rings where somebody challenges a Black Rider. Later on, other people are going to have encounters. A few chapters on, we're going to get to Weathertop, where Strider, Aragorn, is going to take them on. But Aragorn, he's the king in waiting. He's a ranger. He's a trained warrior. Here's Maggot, who's a farmer, ordinary, down-to-earth farmer, challenges the Black Rider, one of the Nazgul, to his face, and the Black Rider kind of gives way. What an example of the heroic. And of course, we come to a couple of chapters on, we're in the house of Tom Bombadil. I'm very, very, very struck what Tom Bombadil has to say about Farmer Maggot. Tom Bombadil later on will say to the hobbits, we're told it no longer surprised them, the hobbits, but Tom made no secret that he owed his recent knowledge of what they'd been up to largely to Farmer Maggot, whom he seemed to regard as a person of more importance than they had imagined. All there's earth under his old feet, and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both his eyes are open, said Tom. Interesting. Well, I find that fascinating. There's a theme. There's so many themes in Lord of the Rings, right? Tolkien was a master at just weaving bigger themes through his books, sometimes more obviously, sometimes in subtle ways. And one of the themes that runs through Lord of the Rings, you can argue actually it's one of the meta themes, the big themes, is that the small people, the ordinary people, the down-to-earth people, the people who the big folks, the important people, overlook are the important ones. Now that obviously takes place at a large level when you've got Frodo. Frodo is the one who is going to ultimately drop the ring, get the ring to Mount Doom. But of course, Sauron completely overlooks him. Why? Because he's ignored the hobbits. Saruman, has overlooked the hobbits. He thinks they're completely insignificant. He has to go at Gandalf for hanging out with hobbits and wasting his time on hobbit lore. But of course, it turns out the hobbits are small but important. And there are lots of other characters who fit that theme. Sam, For example, one of my favourite characters in Lord of the Rings, the ordinary down-to-earth gardener. I mean, you know, he becomes a ring bearer, right? Briefly, he gets to, at the end of the book, read the appendices, he ends up as the last of the ring bearers to cross the sea to the Undying Lands, sailing from the Grey Havens. He's a gardener, is always what he is. But look what he does. And there are these other figures through Lord of the Rings. We might talk about Barlam and Butterbur, the innkeeper, at Bree, who again the movie sort of has him as a sort of slightly sort of lunatic, kind of idiotic figure, not particularly smart. Well, he's not. He forgets things, but actually he's a deeply serious, courageous individual who's got his head screwed on the right way and helps, you know, again save the hobbits from the Black Riders, to protect them in Strider so they can get out and on their way. And then we come to Maggot. Maggot, this farmer, ordinary guy who, you know, most people would not bother with. And Frodo, interestingly, is dismissed. Frodo had a run-in with him when he was a young hobbit because he'd gone mushroom stealing, and more than once, by the way. And Maggot had just sort of, you know, chased him off, as you might do to an errant teenager. And of course, he's missed the fact that he's missed a friend. And that comes out in that chapter, that actually Frodo says at the end of that chapter, you know, I'm really sorry I didn't come and sort of reconnect sooner, because I realise I've really missed somebody who might have been really significant to me. And so I love the fact that throughout Tolkien's legendarium, throughout the Lord of the Rings stories, and The Hobbit too, but particularly we're obviously talking about Lord of the Rings, this theme of actually it's the smallest who matter. And of course, as in so much in Lord of the Rings, that's a massively important theme in the Christian faith, because Jesus famously said, right, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. You know, the world look at power and kings and glory and wonder, but actually the gospel inverts that and says, actually, no, God cares about the small and the least and the tiny ones. And that theme, very much there in Lord of the Rings, and we see it beautifully in the way in this chapter, A Shortcut to Mushrooms, that Tolkien deals with the character of Farmer Maggot. And maybe, actually, the chapter's called A Shortcut to Mushrooms. Maybe the lesson is there's no shortcut to greatness and influence. Sometimes it comes through hard work, faithfulness, long obedience in the one direction, and being willing to bloom where you're planted. And there's Maggot, you know, ordinary farmer by some ways, but Tom Bombadil, very significant character who we'll meet later, has a lot of time for him. And he rescues the hobbits. He stands up to a Black Rider. Great chapter, great character.